Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Thank you all for coming. We have a packed house today, which is exciting to see that although it's vacation season, we're all here working on our business and not letting our businesses take vacations. My name's Olivier Lewis. I'm owner of RE/MAX First Realty 2 in Cranford, along with my partner, Carl Sanfilippo, who owns RE/MAX First Realty in East Brunswick. Carl is not available to be here today because he is doing a training out in Pennsylvania. So I will be moderating for our two guest speakers today. But we will be covering appraisals, and we have Bob Souter from First Team Title, who's our sponsor, who will be giving us a quick overview on title. And then Beth Ogilvie from Ogilvie Appraisals will be covering everything appraisals. Appraisals have been a tough thing for us as the market has changed and it's always evolving. It's been a little harder lately to comp properties. A lot of the agents have come to us with questions because sometimes it feels like there's three different markets, right? There's distress, there's your normal sales, and then there's these renovated properties and new constructions, which they all kind of have their different values. And then we have those outlier properties that just don't make sense, right? You can't comp, there's nothing to match them up. So it's been challenging, and that's why we brought in a professional and an expert to kind of help us get a better understanding and grasp of appraisals and best practices when we are comping properties. So that's what we're going to cover today. Thank you all for coming, and we're going to kick it off with Bob Souter from First Team Title.
Sorry, everybody. I'm not real used to speaking in front of a crowd. I just wanted to let everybody know I'm with Foundation Title. We have a joint venture with Olivier and you guys. It's called First Team Title. A lot of you have been running your work through us, getting a lot of positive stuff that our process, or Corinne is doing a good job. So if anybody wants to try us, please give us a holler. Be more than happy. You'll get that personal one-on-one questions. You can call me at any time, anything that you need. We have a very large marketing department, which some of you are using. I know Jane uses us and some of the other people in the room. It doesn't cost anything. There's a whole open house packages that we put together. You just send the MLS number to our girl in the marketing department. She'll take everything off. They pull all this stuff and send it to you. First, they'll have you proof it. They'll email you all the proofs, your pictures. You want it bigger, you want something taken off, however you want it done. Once you okay it, they will send it to the location that you want. I think there's 15, 20 flyers that you can hand out to the people that walk in. There's a pretty thick book that pulls all the churches and all the good stuff from the area. They put it together. Again, there's no cost to this at all. And it's pretty seamless. The people that started using it are saying, boy, I should have used this before, because there's no cost. There's no downside to it. Heather in our marketing, you can call me, 856-287-4421. My name is Bob Souter.
Okay, thank you.
And it really is seamless. Once you get that contact with the marketing department, and they usually ask for about 2 to 3 days, if you can. I know sometimes you get one at the last minute and you need it, and we can get it done for you. And if you have a situation where you might need a couple extra books because you have a couple people that are very interested, it's really informative. It really is a great piece to just put your picture or your information, whatever you want on it, and there's no cost. So I wanted to tell you about that, and it is all done through the email. So it's not like you got to make phone calls. It's not a pain in the butt to do. It's just literally once you give the MLS number and you contact one of the girls through the email in the department, she'll just email you back. So it's pretty seamless, I know in Jane's, I'm using Jane again, one of her girls just does it for her properties, and she's got a really good relationship where they just email, and it's, can I ask you, Jane, are you happy with what they're?
They're happy, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so it does work. So I just wanted to make that available to all you, and again, if you need me, the cell phone, 856-287-4421. And if you do run your business through First Team Title, I promise you, we have one person that's going to deal with you. You're not dealing with 50 different people. Foundation Title, we're the largest title company in the state of New Jersey, and we have partnered with them so they can generate revenue to bring you things like this where they can give you teaching things. And sure, 856-287-4421.
Thank you.
My name is Bob Souder, Souder. So give it a shot. Again, the price is great. It doesn't cost a nickel. So thank you. Anybody have any questions on it? I'll leave some cards in the back if anybody wants to grab my card, just so you have it, and give me a call, however you want to handle it, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob. I think Bob's being modest about this. It's a really great program that they've rolled out. It's not just the fact that it's no cost to you guys, but it's also the convenience. Just sending over an MLS number and they really run with it. They take the photos. You can say, hey, I want the kitchen, living room, and bedroom. You can have them switch it up. And give them 2 days, but we've turned it around. They've turned it around pretty quick sometimes. So it's a really great service. And for title, they've been amazing. Personally, I bought some homes without an attorney and just closed with First Team, and it's been great. I was nervous at first, not having an attorney to do some closings, but now I'm so confident. I think one of our other agents, Sue, has done closings with First Team without an attorney. So we trust them. They've been great, and they're accountable, so they're there. We need help, we have a question. Bob's always picking up the phone, so thanks again, Bob.
Yep, and again, not to continue with this, but in South Jersey, as you people know, we don't use attorneys. I'm from South Jersey, I don't understand why, but it's just a different world down there. So if you do have a client or yourself that does not want to use an attorney, we can certainly handle that from beginning to end, because I know there's a lot of clients who are getting more and more of them that don't necessarily want to use an attorney. I recommend it personally, but to each his own. And if you have that client, we can handle that as well.
Thank you. So we're going to jump into appraisals very shortly, but again, with the challenging market, any questions you guys have with valuing properties, the process, Beth's going to definitely make it a great presentation for us, but we'll do a Q&A at the end. So if you have something, jot it down, because we definitely want everyone coming out of here having all their appraisal questions addressed or answered. And thank you so much, Beth. So everyone, Beth Ogilvy from Ogilvy Appraisal.
Good morning. So I want to thank Suzanne for putting my name in the hat as potential speakers here. It seemed to work out for me. I want to just get a sense of what we have here in the audience. How many have been in the business over 5 years? Okay. 15 years? Okay. All right. The good old days, right? Any loan officers in here? Cool. All right, jump in. Correct me whenever. Appraisers? Okay, so I don't have to worry about being corrected. Any yogis here? Uh-oh, I got a stressed crowd. All right, we'll work with that. So I've been appraising for over 30 years, since 1986, before there even was state licensing. And yes, there were computers then. I am state certified, which means that I can do any type of residential, 1 to 4. I can 1 to 4 residential properties, high end. I'm not certified to do commercial. I started in the Philadelphia 5-county area. When I got married, I moved back to New Jersey, where I'm originally from. I work Mercer, Middlesex, Somerset counties. I'm a firm believer that an appraiser who's competent needs to know their area. I know these 3 counties very well. You have to understand the nuances in each town. I'm from Princeton. We have 4 different elementary schools there, totally different market between each one. So it is so important to know your market. I stay in my sandbox. I don't go into other people's sandboxes, but I'll help people who come into my sandbox. I've been in all areas of the industry, staff appraiser, management. I started an appraisal company when I was in Philadelphia. I worked for Norwest, which then became Wells Fargo, as a staff appraiser. And then I went out on my own in 2000. I do appraisals for many different purposes, for lending purposes, relocation, removing private mortgage insurance, divorce, tax appeals, estates, pre-listings, and imputed income. I got my MBA along the way, and I have 2 wonderful children. State licensing for real estate appraisers came into effect in the 80s, and it got expedited because of the crash of the market. And life was good for a while until the market crashed around 2007, 2008. In response to the crash, the response, not surprising to many, was a little politically motivated, but we ended up with Home Valuation Code of Conduct, also known as HVCC. That was formed by Freddie Mac, the Federal Housing Financing Agency, and the New York Attorney General. And it stated that effective May 1st, 2009, the Freddie Mac seller and services must represent and warrant that the appraisal report is obtained in a manner consistent with this code. The one portion of the code that was most devastating to the appraisal industry was that appraisers no longer worked directly for the lender. Lenders had to order appraisals through appraisal management companies. They wanted to distance the appraisers from the realtors, from the lenders. There was the notion that it was too cozy of a situation, and appraisers were being unduly influenced, and as a result, a lot of properties were being overfinanced. The problem with the HVCC, it was a good concept, but there was no regulation. There was no oversight of it. And there was no regulation in terms of what constituted an appraisal management company. So what ended up happening, first of all, it affected over 1 million appraisers in the industry, was that, first of all, our fees got cut because appraisal management companies took off, their portion of the fee, which again was not regulated. You ended up getting a lot of unqualified appraisers, because what the appraisal management companies would do was they get a panel of appraisers and they just rotated. And it really didn't depend on your area of expertise. A lot of really qualified appraisers had a lot of other work. They wouldn't do work for the appraisal management companies. So you ended up with a lot of unqualified appraisers who would go into any sandbox and who did not know the area. And so even where I live, I'm in Princeton, and believe it or not, Princeton mailing address is 3 counties. Appraisers sometimes would just go look at Princeton, and they wouldn't understand the nuances there. So you ended up having deals fall through, and as realtors, buyers, sellers, you could appeal the appraisal, but that would involve you contacting the buyer had to initiate it. The buyer goes to the loan officer goes to the appraisal management company. Appraisal management company goes to the appraiser. Appraiser has already finished the appraisal. Appraisal has been paid. They've been paid for the appraisal. They're on to their next one. And so I don't say all the time, but a lot of times it's just easier for the appraiser to take the path of least resistance, which was just say, oh, that supporting information is not relevant, my value stands. And boom, they're right back on the rotating panel. So there were no consequences. So deals fall through, and there's very little recourse. And then overall in the appraisal business for loans, there's just not as many qualified appraisers. So now, 20 years later, fortunately, we're starting to see the pendulum swing a little bit more neutral. Unfortunately, it's at as a result of a lot of AMCs going out of business now. Because they weren't regulated, there was no structure in terms of their fees and their profits or anything. So there's one company called Evaluation Solutions, who was a large AMC. They were primarily servicing Chase Bank, and they folded, and they owed over $11 million to appraiser fees. So what's happening now is a lot of lenders now are kind of creating their own appraisal panels. Again, the definition of AMCs until recently really hasn't been defined. So now they can just have their own appraisal or their own appraisal panel fee or panels, which is so much better. So I think this is a good time maybe to segue into the relationship with the appraisers and the realtors. I have a quiz. So this I found in Appraisal Buzz, and I thought it was really relevant to this group. So I'm going to ask a couple questions here. Can real estate agents and appraisers communicate with each other concerning the subject property? Okay. Yes, A. No. C, only indirectly through the lender, or D, only indirectly through the buyer and seller. So I'm going to ask my lenders back there. Were you listening? Did you hear the question?
Yeah.
Oh, so what do you think?
I'll go with A.
A, okay. Cool. So now, the second part of that is, when is it usually appropriate for an appraiser to have direct communication with a real estate agent? Only if the real estate agent is the point of contact at any time during the appraisal process until the report is submitted to the lender. Only if the real estate agent reaches out to the appraiser first, or after the appraiser completes the value opinion report. So that's key, and I'm going to follow up on that later on, because a lot of appraisers are really hesitant about that because they don't want to continue to have communication with realtors. They're just very fearful of it looking like they're being influenced. So we're going to revisit that in a little bit. Okay, so generally, when should direct communication between an appraiser and the real estate agent end? That's kind of a silly question. It's basically after the submission of the initial appraisal report to the client. And then what is an example of information a real estate agent can provide an appraiser? So select all that apply. One is the sales used by the agent as comparable sales to determine the price, list and dates of upgrades and remodels including cost, neighborhood details, deeds and covenants, and home ownership association details. So that's pretty obvious. It's all of them. So again, there is a skittishness about like the neighborhood details, and obviously you guys know what you can and cannot say. Which of these actions are real estate agents prohibited from doing? Select all that apply. A, meeting the appraiser at the property inspection. We know that that's not prohibited. Attempting to influence the appraiser. Obviously that is, and everyone has their own interpretation of that. And I'm going to give you some thoughts on how to work with that. Giving the appraiser a packet of relevant documents to the property, that's key. Obviously, that's very advisable. Advising the buyer about the real estate agent's experience with a lender and their appraisal process. Obviously, you can't do that. Directly asking the lender for a reconsideration of the value without going through the borrower. As I spoke about prior, you have to go through the borrower. Can a real estate agent ask the appraiser for corrections and/or clarifications to appraisal once submitted? Again, yes, but it has to go through the borrower. And the next two questions are just basically speak to the fact that any process initiated with an appeal has to go through the borrower, who is the lender's client. So my recommendations for realtors is, again, a lot of appraisers are just really worried about being accused of being influenced by anybody. In fact, when we submit reports through lenders, we actually have to check off something saying that we were not influenced by any outside entity. So you don't want to miss your point of contact with the appraiser. So meet the appraiser at the appointment. Especially if you don't know the appraiser, meet the appraiser at the appointment. And give them a packet, a sealed envelope, whatever, of information. And in that information, a clear copy of the contract, first of all, because sometimes we get contracts, they've been copied, scanned, and they're just not legible, and we might miss a fine detail, like sale price. Give them an MLS listing of the subject property. Give them MLS listings of comparable listings, pendings, and closed sales. In addition to that, anything that might be an anomaly, if there's like a really low sale on the street, mark it up. Mark every single one of those MLS listings up. Mark it up. Indicate that, things that might not be in the MLS listing, like high tension towers across the street. A future shopping center is going to be put in there. A distress sale. So that way, when the appraiser gets back to their office, they can open that up, and you don't have that angst, that uncomfortable situation of having a conversation where it could be perceived as being influenced, and where an appraiser who may not know the area wants to come across that they do know the area, and will say, oh, no, I don't need that, I already know that, or they may not. It just creates a really comfortable situation, avoids a lot of awkwardness, and again, it's one of the most productive ways I think that you can communicate with the appraiser, and they cannot be accused of being influenced. You're just providing them information, and it's factual information. But please mark up those MLSs, because there are some things like a layout. So there could be a 5-bedroom, or let's say a 4-bedroom house, but access to one bedroom is through another bedroom. Okay, that may not be explained in the MLS, but if you know that, explain it, because in our world, that's a 3-bedroom property, not a 4-bedroom property. So I can't stress that enough, to have all that information. And even if you have a site plan, put that in. Or I know a lot of real estate offices now have sketches of the properties. Put that in. Because that might be the only time that you get to have a conversation with that appraiser. The other thing I ask that realtors do too, if you have an appraiser call you up and they want information on a sale that you had, and they have certain questions about it, please answer them, because those are appraisers who are doing their job. They're the professional appraisers. They're trying to be thorough. And the other part of that is that property that they're appraising could be the comp for your next sale. So the more we work together, I think that the easier it's going to be, and the more professional, and the less difficulty we're going to create for ourselves. So now back to my world in terms of what we have to deal with for the appraisers. A few years ago, in an effort to expedite the appraisal submittal process for loans with Fannie and Freddie, at the direction of the Federal Housing Finance Agency, they developed what's called Uniform Appraisal Data Set, or UAD. So this is a lot of the fields in the appraisal form now are coded. So like conditions C1, C2, C3, each have a different definition. Like C1 is a brand new house, C2 is an almost brand new house, or a house has been totally renovated, and so forth. And then quality is C1, C2, C3, and then a lot of other fields also have this. So there was a little learning curve in trying to use it, but also we as an appraisers have to go a little bit further now to explain some of these things when those codes actually don't reflect the property. So I'm only saying this to you guys because if you get an appraisal report that was for loan purposes, maybe for one of your properties, and you see all these coded things, that's why. It's not user-friendly for people who aren't appraisers or lenders. Some things that are just kind of wacky in it. Like if you have a property that's under, the lot size is under an acre, you put the square footage, like 42,000 square feet. But if you have a property, and then if you have comps or whatnot, or anything over an acre, you have to list it in acreage. So you could see on the back of a report along a line item, you could say one's in acreage, one's in square footage. And so it's not an apples to apples view on it, but for whatever reason, it works for when we submit it to the portals. So when we do appraisals, most underwriters now require that we bracket everything on a report. So if you have a 10-year-old property, they want a comparable under 10, comparable over 10 at the very least. Even when it comes to sale price, as silly as it seems, if you have, like, say if it's a non-arm's length transaction between family members, they still want a sale under that sale price, which makes no sense whatsoever, because you're not talking about an arm's length transaction, or it's a comparable that's an arm's length transaction, which is just, I don't know why they do that, but they do that. So that's one of the things that we have to do. So again, if you see a report and there's like a really low ball comparable in it, that's the reason for it. I think that the final opinion of value should be bracketed, but that's just my little world. Now for those unique properties, so if you have a lakefront property or one with an in-law suite or finished basement, which isn't too unique, they want at least one comparable that has that same amenity, which can be tough. Especially, like, say if you're in North Brunswick, there are a couple lakefront properties, but not a lot of them. But they're going to want the appraiser to keep expanding their search, and that would be expanding in terms of time, how old the comparable is, and or distance. So as you know, and I know in a lot of markets, as of 2018, January 2018, when the new tax bill came into place, there was a huge change in especially the high-end markets. So if you have to expand your search beyond that, go like 2016, 17, a lot of underwriters now are going to be looking for time adjustments. So that's a little bit more work for appraisers to do. So in order to justify time adjustments or to come up with the figures to apply to time adjustments, what we need to do is we need to find a sale that sold like maybe prior to 2017 and then resold after or to 2018, January 2018, and then try to reconcile and see what the monthly time adjustment would be. So that's also information that you guys might want to keep a separate file for those kind of transactions, because that's also information you might want to give to an appraiser, especially an appraiser who's not familiar with the area. So I know in my file, I keep all those. If I see a property, because you can see the histories, and if I see something that had recently transacted, I will put that on my file, because I know I'm going to need to use that for a time adjustment sometime soon. But the ridiculousness of this rule, I mean, I can see it to a certain extent, but they take it to the extreme. Does anybody here work Mercer County? Are you pretty much some? Okay. So do you know in Robbinsville, the Charbel development there, my mind's blocking. But anyway, they have condominiums there, and new construction, newer, or was, I think, they might be built out now. But anyway, some of them have their mid-risers. On the first floor, a lot of those buildings have commercial. So if you're doing an appraisal in there, first of all, any condominium, underwriters want at least one comparable out of the development. They also want one comparable out of the development that has commercial on the first level. So, okay, it's not going to happen right there in Robbinsville. The closest you can get is Princeton, which as the crow flies is maybe 15 miles, but you're talking Palmer Square. It's so irrelevant. And when we make our adjustments for our comparables, the guidelines are we have to have our net adjustments under 15% and our gross under 25%. No line item adjustment is supposed to be over 10%. Obviously, that's not always the case, but we have to go into lengthy description as to why that we had to do that. So you go from Robbinsville to Princeton, I mean, you're talking at least a 40% adjustment for location as it is. So that wipes out all of your, adjustments. But they require it, so you have to put it down. So again, if you come across a situation like that and appraisers from out of the area, it might be helpful to kind of maybe make a suggestion of where there might be something that might be able to fulfill that underwriter's requirement. So, so those are the things you might want to think about when you're pulling listings, pendings, or closed to put in that envelope for the appraiser. So that's what we're dealing with right now. So the future of the appraisal world, just like the future of your world, is going to be very interesting moving forward. The millennials, like many of you probably are forcing businesses, which I think is a strong word, but I think they're definitely influencing businesses to be more fintech, which is a new word in my world, but financial technology. So I think, and I know my kids are this way, they want everything's on their app, everything. I mean, they don't even have desktops. Most people don't have desktops anymore. But even their laptops, they rarely use. Everything, they want it right there on their smartphone. So the financial institutions are responding to this, which, okay, I understand it, but the CEO of Fannie Mae indicated that appraisals should be done at the desk and should not require field inspections by appraisers. So here we go from being given these incredible requirements to know the area and so forth, and now the CEO of Fannie Mae is saying that we shouldn't even go out and look at the properties. So anybody see a red flag in that? And the reason for this is to expedite the appraisal process. Okay, so most lenders now require, again in the back, correct me if I'm wrong, appraisers 5 days at max, right? Maybe some outstanding situation, maybe a week and a half or something like that. So they want it to be expedited to even shorter period of time, which I don't know. I mean, can we get everything that we need to close for a loan? Can we get that done that quickly? Home inspections, title. I mean, so I just can't wrap my head around it yet, but it's something that we may have to deal with. So what they're saying, though, is that they're looking at the concept of having a property data collector. So basically, an inspector just go out, take a look at a property. So that would mean that this property data inspector would be contacting you guys. I'm not sure how they introduce themselves, or won't be introducing themselves as appraisers. They go out, take some photos, do a layout, look at the condition, send that back to the lender, okay? And the lender will work with Fannie Mae and decide whether or not they even have to have an appraisal done. So then they could either totally waive the appraisal, they could ask for a hybrid appraisal, which is an appraiser sitting at their desk using that information that an inspector gathered from a property and basing a value on that. Or they could order a full appraisal.
Who can waive the appraisal?
The lender working with Fannie.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
So I know for me, my E&O insurance is going to look at me. Mm-hmm. They're not going to look at that inspector if something happens.
There's actually a fourth option, which is a property inspection waiver. So for a $75 fee, when the title is uploaded to Fannie Mae through the DU system, depending on the characteristics of that loan, it might come back with findings that don't require an appraisal at all. Client pays a $75 fee, no appraisal needed on that property.
Right. And that I was reading about that, and I didn't bring it up here because to be quite honest, I wasn't quite clear about it. I'm glad you mentioned it. When I was reading it, said it was up to the borrower and the lender. So so it's just the lender when they look at their risk, right?
Yeah. When we take the tenant's rate, we upload it to the Fannie Mae portal.
Right.
They'll come back with findings. In those findings, they'll detail whether an appraisal is even necessary or not.
Right, and is that based on the de minimis PUD too?
It is based on, they have certain algorithms that they take into account.
Right.
The LTV of the deal, the credit score, the debt ratio. If it's a pretty clean deal, I've had quite a few property inspection waivers. You don't need an appraisal at all.
Right, and I also heard that some of them are looking at certain data sources to put in the mix too, like Zillow, Trulia, and as far as I'm concerned, those are free services for a reason, right? So I don't know how this is all going to work out, but I know me professionally, I am not going to put an opinion of value on something that I have not seen.
Did that already start?
They're just working on it. I have a date.
Because both of us have had this happen to us where there was no appraisal.
Okay.
So I didn't know if that's already started. What's the?
I can, and again, my guy's back there. So you've seen it happen already, right? Right. Have you seen it come back that they want to have that blended appraisal then?
No.
I've had it too, but they explained to me that they put so much money down that it just wasn't needed.
Right. Yeah. I've seen that. That's been around for yeah.
It just seems like we're going back to.
We're going right back. We're going right back to creating a problem, and I'm not sure what the benefit is because if you cost-wise, I mean, cost versus your risk, I don't quite understand it.
Who makes that call? Is it the lender or the buyer?
It's Fannie and Freddie, right? Because after you guys upload the information.
I think I have last year 3 or 4 appraisals that the bank completely says 5% down, the bank says no appraisal required.
With 5% down?
5% down, they comes in, they say automatically comes in, so the lender I use, he's run the desktop underwriting first, see if that can come a flag and no appraisal required.
Well, I don't know. It just goes against my grain, but we'll go with the ride. We'll see how it goes. All I can say is, for me, I'm not going to participate in putting a value on anything I haven't seen. I've been doing this for too long. It's my my income, and I'm not going to risk that.
Buyer appeal it.
Sorry?
Can the buyer appeal it?
As the buyer.
Can the buyer say, no, it's unacceptable, I want it to be appraised?
I don't know. They're shaking their head. Yes. Yeah.
They can, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
you can.
Okay.
And also on that property inspection waiver, you can take it a step further because if any of the characteristics of that deal end up changing, and later on the underwriter reruns to you, and it comes back and an appraisal is required, I've seen that happen too. For example, let's say you take on a deal somewhere along the lines of borrower misses a payment on something, or decides they want to put less money down than original, something like that, something material change on the deal. You may have originally gotten a property inspection waiver later on, when you rerun to you, right, as the file was going through underwriting, they may remove that from you. So it's not like it's in there and forever.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Oh,
they can request to have an appraisal, but they don't have to accept the waiver.
oh, cool. Thank you.
So when appraisal is required, I just want to give you I think I've explained some of the things that I think that how we could work together with getting good qualified appraisals, even when an appraiser is not familiar with the area. But some of the, like an ideal appraisal for an underwriter, just so you know, would be using all comparables that are under 3 months old, and closing dates, they are within a mile, and they're within 20% of gross living area of the subject property. So that's an ideal cookie cutter appraisal, which probably if it's so ideal cookie cutter, they're probably not even going to order them anymore. But just so you know, if you're pulling comps, those are, that's the immediate criteria. And then again, sure, closed within 3 months of the date of the inspection, the effective date of the appraisal, within a mile, and the gross living area is within 20% of the subject's gross living area.
Okay, so I'm all about that. How do you, as an appraiser, get be 20% of the gross living area when we as realtors don't put in what
We go public records. Fortunately, there are a lot of public records.
we can't even find them, so is there a place?
Yeah, well, so there's that New Jersey state tax, state assessor website, and it always, when you Google it, always comes up with Monmouth County first. I don't know why. And most towns have it, although Metuchen is notorious for not having it. And then you have to call the assessor and get the property record card.
It's New York.
New Jersey, just Google New Jersey tax assessor website, and it'll pull up. NJAct.
B.org.
B.org, yeah. Yeah, and it's a free service. Yeah, and it'll come up, it defaults to Monmouth County, and then you just put whatever county, and you could put the lot and block or whatnot. And sometimes there are 2 fields to look at. And a lot of towns actually have property record cards that you can pull up. And I know Mercer County has, if anyone's doing work in there, a fabulous website, Mercer PIP, Mercer Property Information Portal. Again, it's a free service, and you can pull up property record cards for any property in Mercer County.
So what I found with trying to find the private sales is the deeds don't get recorded right away, and it can be months. Even stuff that I've sold off market, I noticed that it can be months before the deeds get recorded, so you can't really use it. Is there a better mechanism?
Just find out who the buyer and seller were, or see if you can get it. Sometimes you can actually call the county, because it has to get recorded in the county first before it goes to the town. And then if you can't confirm it, legally like that, then the appraiser can use it as a 4th or 5th comp in it, in the report. So you just have to do the best you can. That's all you can do. But fortunately now, a lot of square footages and so forth are made more available. You have to be careful though. Sometimes they're not always, as accurate as they should be. But again, you do the best you can, because us as appraisers, we indicate the source of our where we get our data, and that's all we can do. So I did want to just speak briefly on, because I'm coming across it a lot more on raised ranchers and how we as appraisers look at gross living areas, okay? So by definition, anything that is partially below grade or whatnot is considered basement area. So anything totally above grade, meaning all 4 walls above grade, that's gross living area. But anything below, so you have a lot of raised ranchers that have, extensively finished walkout basements, but not bi-levels. So customary bi-levels, no, generally, because that's just customary to the area. But I'm speaking more to if you have a raised ranch and somebody's trying to capture that lower level as gross living area, and then you're comparing it with a Cape Cod, that partially below grade area isn't as valuable as everything above grade. So you're not comparing apples to apples. So bi-levels, split levels are a good example where typically that area actually just because of the customary norms in the area is considered above grade. Assessors consider above grade. You go to mountain areas where a lot of times they have a lower walkout area, or in Princeton where I am, we have lake. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. That's I had it off. I'm so. Okay, that's my mother. Sorry. We have a lake there, and a lot of so you have some properties that only have 1 bedroom on the first floor, and walk out. The only time you could include that lower area as gross living area is if all 3 of your comparables are set up the same way. So that would be the same thing with split levels and bi-levels and so forth and so on. Again, mountain areas, a lot of times that's the case and so forth. But for the normal market, no. Mom. Sorry. Mom's okay. I know. Right? Oh, she'd be mortified. A little. Oh, I should do it because I'm mortified. But anyway, so I know I get in this conversation a lot with people, but by definition, no. If it's below grade, partially below grade, I don't care. I mean, some of those below grades they're gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous, but it's below grade. Now, us as appraisers, when there's a separate line item for basement area, we'll give that a lot of value, a lot of walkout basement, list all that, they have some kitchen, media rooms, bathrooms, bedrooms, and so forth, exercise rooms. Yeah, it will be captured in the report, but just not as gross living area.
No.
Okay, the style of the home, it seems like the style of the home is not as important as the square footage within the house.
No.
So you okay, no what? You don't take...
Style is important. I should have explained that a little bit more. Yeah, so yeah, when you're pulling your comps, definitely style. Yeah, style is a fact. I'm just saying some of the harder line criteria that we have to go by. But definitely, yeah, style is very important, and that also usually speaks to the layout too.
Okay.
So.
On the flip side of that, attics. Mm-hmm. Do you guys consider that gross?
It all depends.
Okay.
It all depends. So if you have and what's customary for the area? Because sometimes you have certain areas like Clara Barton and so forth. You have the Cape Cods, and they do have the bedroom on the second floor and so forth, bathroom and so forth. For that area, that would be considered yes, in the gross area. Okay. But in some other areas, say if you have like an area that has a lot of Victorians, right, and some have like a little finished like really pitched, area and so forth. No, that would really be included in finished attic area. So, some people think, well, it should be included in gross living area. Well, okay, that's your opinion, but we have to go by what, our standards say. But it's still included in the report. Right. It's just a different line item.
Right.
It's just a la carte.
What about, does it have to have heat in that finished attic area?
It depends on how you it's a separate line item. It's not gross living area. Gross living area has to have heat, but the separate line item could be finished attic or finished heated attic. So you can make that, that distinction. So I'm going to get to questions in a little bit, in 1 second actually, 2 seconds. But I want to make the point that there is some kind of doom and gloom out there, but I always like to end everything on a positive note. So I'm a true believer. In fact, I told my husband on my gravestone I want this. 99% of the world's problems come to communication. So I think this kind of interaction is so good because in addition to that, I feel that nothing beats a face-to-face. And although I appreciate technology, right now technology can't replace that. So I think that it's really important to continue to have these conversations, especially as things evolve or change, if you want to look at it that way, in the market. So on that note, if there are any questions? 3, okay. Mom, I'll call you back. No, just kidding. No.
When doing appraisals, will the appraiser take into account any FISBOs that has been sold in the last 1 year?
We are supposed to do so. FISBO that might not be in the MLS.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, that would be a good thing for you to present to the table because an appraiser might not have that information. So some things aren't recorded; they can't find them right away. Sometimes on some of the for sale by owner websites, they fizzle out after they've been closed. So that a lot of times.
The only thing I have is the tax records that has been sold January 18 and.
But no other information on it?
Whatever it is.
So that you could present to the appraiser and they could use that for descriptive purposes. But if there is no other information about the marketing of that property, that would be really difficult for an appraiser to use as one of their primary comps. And
third or the fourth comp rather than being the first one.
Yeah, but even something like that, if there's not a lot of information about it, they would probably just talk about it in the report. Yeah, because it'd be hard to get, unless they could get a reliable property record card that actually indicates all the interior features. It might be difficult to do that.
So if I know the property very well, but it's been sold by Facebook, I can write the description and give it to her.
Yep. And just want to get back, so we work, when I speak to main comparables, we have to have at least 3 comparables. Most lenders require us to have either 1 or 2 listing or pending sales, and then all this other just, information we can put on the grids too.
I recently came, it was a couple of months ago, that I didn't have any comps for one of my listings, and I had to go, this is 19, I had to go into 17 to pull the comps. How do you adjust the time rate or the time number to accommodate that appreciation or depreciation of that property?
So first of all, as an appraiser, if I had to use 3 comps that are 2 years old, that would never fly. I'd have to go further or use, whatever. But if for any time adjustments, you look at, you get a sale property that's, resold within, a time period of like 2 years, and then you make the adjustment. You do a prorated.
Is there a number that I?
Yeah, because so if you have a property that's sold for $100,000, and then 2 years later it sold for.
No, it was sold 2 years ago, but it never got resold again.
Right. So I understand. So what we as appraisers do, we look at any sale in that area that has resold, and we use that prorated monthly rate and apply that to the comparable. Well, it depends.
On area to area?
Oh, it depends on what that resale that the appraiser is using as data indicates. So, like, just say for example, there's a property that sold for $100,000 2 years ago, and just now it sold for $50,000. Okay, so you look at not your property, but any property in that area. So then you divide 50,000 by 24 months, and you get a monthly depreciation, and then you would apply it to that sale that sold in 2017 that is using as a comparable.
Okay. And my last question. I do a lot of Facebooks.
Okay.
So I came across 3 properties. The Zillow square footage says X amount, whereas the tax record says Y amount, and there is a difference. It's not like a couple of 100 square feet, but there's a difference of 1,500 square feet.
Okay. So which is the free service?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So as an
Is there something fishy going on between this
could be.
information?
Could be, but you know what? An appraiser, if they get pulled up to the state and have to defend a value, they can hang their hat on the assessor's number. They cannot hang their hat on the Zillow number.
Zillow can be manipulated by the seller. I went in today and changed my thing to 7,000 square feet. So you can never use Zillow for a comparable as opposed to.
So technically, they might have done some improvements to the house, but they have not filed any permits, and something is.
Technically, they went in and changed what they wanted it to be.
Yeah. But as an appraiser, if I have like, it's a cookie cutter development, and I see that one has a huge addition on the back, and that in public records are all listed the same square footage, think, well, there is something else going on there, and you do a little bit more work to figure it out.
How accurate is the tax assessor information is, because some I'm finding they still have a underground oil tank when the tank was removed 23 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize tax assessors, they put oil tanks in there?
Yes, I saw the report because we have one property just pull out, and I went to tax assessor, he said, oh, this house is still heated by an underground oil tank. I said,
Underground.
Oh, because it's still heated, right?
Yeah, and that means, okay. But it's case by case. It's town by town. Really, it's town. I mean, there's some that are just like spot on, and some you just got to take with a grain of salt. Yeah.
So I had
Sorry, why do you have to seal the envelope that you give to the?
Oh, I'm just saying, don't discuss it right there. Just give it to the appraiser.
What if he asks you?
So, oh, well, I guess you could. Sure, I mean, you don't be rude, but yeah, you could.
Now, you have made a statement, don't shoot, no, go. I'm sorry. You have made a statement in regards to getting an appraiser that knows the area. Because it seems like we don't have control over who they send, or do we, and we just don't know. No, you don't.
You don't. So that's why you make the best, yep. Yeah. Susie.
Okay, so how do you guys expect us to help you go through that? In the same respect, every appraiser that calls me regarding help, I always put their name down, which property and stuff. Is there some kind of confidentiality that, I don't know, if you called me for a property and said 223 Main Street, can you tell me if this is blah, blah, blah? Is there a confidentiality with you and the lender or whoever you're doing that appraisal for that you can't tell me why you're doing it so that it can help us as well? So if you're doing a refinance or you're doing a resale.
Yeah, it is kind of a one-way street. I mean, we can, sorry, we can say we're working on appraisal, we're in the neighborhood, we're working on a refinance in the neighborhood, but we really can't give you the address.
So if I'm comping a cape and I can't find comps that are capes, what's the best strategy to figure out the value?
So for capes,
or just any home, if the style is different and you can't find apples to apples, can you go bigger? Can you go smaller?
You know what? My rule of thumb is make sure. So in the appraisal report, we have the subject, we have a list of the line items, square footage, blah blah blah, and then you have the three comparables and their line items. My rule of thumb: mix and match. So get one from the neighborhood. It might be, really funky compared to the subject. Go further, get one similar style. So each line item, there's not an adjustment. So at least one comp has something similar to the subject property. And we're gonna probably have to do like 5 or 6 comparables. But you just kind of mix and match and just try to, create as best a picture as you can. Obviously you can't make up comps, but so you just have to do the best you can. And that's where it's so important to know the neighborhood. You need to know if you're going into a neighborhood that has more demand or less demand, and you might have to make an adjustment for it. And that's why you have to know your area. So, and if they don't, that's where realtors can really help. So. Oh, right behind you first. I'm sorry. She's at her.
Colonial, one of those Victorian large colonial houses, very large, in a town where there was nothing else like it. The appraisal came in 105,000 under, which is something I've never seen. I was told, and I gave her some prompts, that because there was nothing in that town, that if I went to a similar town with a similar school system, that you could use that town. So, for example, this was in South River. I went to Holland Park because they have the same similar colonial Victorians. This woman said she couldn't use it because it was Jewish community as opposed to South River not.
First of all, that's so cringeworthy. They said that. That's so cool. Okay. I'd hate to see that. Okay, well, no, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. So the way I would have approached that, so first of all, the concern would be, is the value supported in South River, right? Are there other properties in South River that may have similar square footage or whatnot that support that value? So I would use some comps in there that again would look funky. It would have
to be a newer house though because there's nothing else.
Okay. Was that an over-improvement? Was that Victorian an over-improvement for that? Yes, okay. There's the problem.
Well, she didn't consider the third floor space like you were speaking about attic.
She gave it no value?
This is a 20 by 30 space with a closet and being used as a bedroom, but she gave it no value.
Okay, well, I would disagree with that. I would have given it value as a finished attic space, yeah. And then if, again, I would have tried to find a Victorian somewhere, and you have to make...
You can't use another town, even though it's with...
You can use another town. Yes, and that's why I was saying that the lenders are going to want you to have another sale with a similar amenity, and they are going to want you to keep expanding the search until you find one. But then you use other sales in the town to... Yes, yeah.
My question is, when you're doing appraisal, let's say for home line of equity, you're doing for a divorce situation, refinance, or a sale, is it all done the same way, the same criteria and guidelines, or is it different depending on what the appraisal is being done for?
So thanks for bringing that up. So as I said, I do appraisals for all different purposes. My work files, regardless of what type of appraisal I do, are all the same. So the ingredients into the report might be a little bit different, but the thinking and it is the same. Now, sometimes so sometimes we don't have to explain it as much, like home equity loans or so forth. We might not have to do as much explaining on it. And then sometimes estate appraisals, we just have a different effective date, maybe on the date of death. But again, everything, the same amount of work goes into it. Our USPAP, Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice, we all have to abide by that. And it's the same. It's the same for whatever kind of opinion of value you present.
Thank you.
Hi.
I have kind of a similar question like she had in a town if you don't find a similar property. Like I have a house which is on a rural street, and they have a septic tank, and it's a 2 kitchen, but it's a very big house. Now I don't find any that kind of house in that town within 10 to 12 miles. So what can we do to get that appraised?
So is it a 2-family, or it just has 2 kitchens?
It has 2 kitchens. It's 1 family, 3 floors.
Okay.
The basement and the main floor and the upstairs.
So again, as an appraiser, I would just try to find, for obviously, at least one comp with a septic system, because septic is becoming a big issue. And then at least one other comp. It might be public sewer, but it has 2 kitchens in it. So chances are, and one that's on a rural road that might not have either. You might have 1 kitchen and a public sewer. But again, you mix and match, because it sounds like that's a unique property, and you're probably not going to find the exact, property.
Nothing is sold in that area, around that street for years.
Really? Oh. Yeah, again, they just have to, find the nearest sale that is similar in some amenities to the property. Sounds like a tough one.
Thanks.
My last question. Is there, because I find that one of the hardest things that agents have challenges with are making adjustments. Is there some kind of guide or guideline that you guys use that could be made public to realtors, that what a bedroom is worth, an extra bedroom, what a garage is worth, just how do you make adjustments?
So if I gave you that information, I'd be out of business. No, no. It really depends on the area. You can't standardize those things. So take for example in urban areas, okay? The value of a finished basement could be a much bigger percentage than the value of a finished basement in like a 4-bedroom colonial, just because space is so precious and tight. So it really depends. There is no rule. You just have to know the area. And in terms of bedrooms, I can tell you a general rule. Usually in properties, anything over four bedrooms, it really lends little value to the property because family sizes are not as large, and a lot of times people use that additional room as a den anyway. So I can tell you that. I can also tell you that there is a big difference between properties, like say if you have a Cape or a ranch that's 2-bedroom versus one that's 3-bedroom.
It's a big argument all the time. If it has a closet, it's a bedroom. If it doesn't have a closet, it's not a bedroom. And I've heard from appraisers it cannot have a closet and still be a bedroom. So which is it?
Does it depend on the age of the house?
Yeah, so there, sometimes they will have closets in like a hallway, and the bedroom could use that, so you could do that. Sometimes, but yeah, by definition, a bedroom has to have an access to a full bathroom. So again, you have some listings, they have 5 bedrooms. 1 bedroom is on the first floor, and there's a half bath, not a full bath. That's not a bedroom.
Even if there's a closet?
Yep, there has to be a full bathroom. Because it's a privacy violation. In order for somebody in that bathroom to use a bedroom to use a bathroom, they have to go through a common hallway to go upstairs. So that's a 4-bedroom. So, but yeah, so in general, no. I mean, if there's no closet in a room you want to call a bedroom, right? So the appraiser can call it a bedroom, but they also have to take off what they call functional utility, which could be the cost to cure to install a closet in that room. Yeah.
I have a question, but it's more for like everyone. So this is like an ongoing debate. Who is supposed to meet the appraiser? The buyer's agent or the listing agent?
Buyers.
Normally you want the buyers.
But why? You made the price.
That's
You
you're representing the buyers.
Yeah, right, but you
But if you're handing them an appraisal, you want to make sure that the buyer's getting a report for the house. You want to give them
But when you went to list the house, you used comps to come up with that price.
But are you the listing agent or buyer's agent?
I'm the buyer's agent.
Okay.
So why wouldn't you want to make sure that your price is
Well,
met?
listing agents do normally, some do go to the listing, they attend the appraisal as well. Some listing agents do go to the appraisal as well.
Yeah.
I go to, when I list, I go to the appraisal as well.
Well, I hear you on that, but I'm not going to go when you're going to be there. That's a waste of my time.
Well, the reason why I go when I'm representing the buyers, because the listing agent is going to say, I'll give you an example, I have a listing in Carteret. This guy was trying to sell the most expensive house because it's new, and the entire Carteret, there's no comps to it. I went and he went, but he went basically to kind of talk to the appraiser and say, oh, well, we just finished this, we did that, and I'm looking at the appraisal like, it doesn't matter, the comps don't make sense. So they overpriced the house by like $45,000.
So your buyer went in knowing that this could potentially go to the dealer?
Yes, yeah, I let him know. But I went because I wanted to see what he was gonna say also, because some agents don't care, they don't understand that there's a limit in a relationship between the appraiser. You can't really say too much to the appraiser when they're appraising a property that's gonna make them, who's gonna try to steer them. This guy didn't care, he just kept egging it on, and I'm like, well, here are my comps, have a nice day, sir.
Because I came into real estate with like a bunch of old school agents, like 35 years plus. I'm pretty much born into this. And my mother always told me, no, it's the listing agent's responsibility. So like, they'll like laugh in my face, and I'm like, no, you can go do it. I brought your buyer, go do it. Back up your price.
I can speak to that. So it's actually a regional thing. So in Mercer County, it's the listing agent meets you. Middlesex County and Somerset County, it's just usually the buyer's agent. It's kind of like the a title insurance. North Jersey use an attorney, South Jersey you don't. It's kind of like it's just a customary regional thing that I have found. Now I think that if you have a particular situation, between the agents, you might be able to figure it out. But I'll tell you, as an appraiser, if I call an agent and the agent says that's not my job, you have to call the other realtor. I tell you, I call whoever is on the contact, whoever the mortgage company gives me to contact.
Which is normally the buyers.
It depends. It's not. It depends. So, but anyway, so but either way, it shouldn't matter, because you're not supposed to influence the appraiser. And if, like, say, if you're the listing agent, you're the selling agent, you're meeting the appraiser, then you could, and you have information to give, then you could just give it to him to give whatever. Mm-hmm. So it really shouldn't matter who meets them, but just as long as whoever meets them gives them the information.
Who would you call?
Again, I call whoever the first.
Let's just say that you didn't get the sheet, right? You're just driving.
It would depend if I'm Mercer or Middlesex. Yeah,
gotcha.
and Mercer I call the listing agent.
Okay.
Yep,
Gotcha.
yep,
Okay.
yep. So.
How does solar panels affect
We're not there yet. So still in the state of New Jersey, assessors look at them as non-realty items. You know, and the other thing with solar panels is there's a generational factor there. You know, the first generation of solar panels did a lot of damage to roofs. They're very unsightly, and a lot of buyers ask them to be removed. So until we get firm data on them, we're not going to be able to give value. Now there is a thing with some, it started about, I don't know, like 7 years ago, but I just haven't seen it move forward. It's called the HERS, Home Energy Rating System or something like that. And you can get a number. You can have your house evaluated, and an actual number comes out as to how energy efficient your home is. It looks like, you know, how windy the windows are, and how solid, how much insulation and so forth and so on. And until we have those numbers and people put them in the MLS, and us as appraisers and you as realtors can actually see the effect on a sale price, we can't use it. There's just not enough.
It's just like it's a non-value, it doesn't add or take away.
That's how we look at it, because it's a non-realty item.
Yeah, because they're becoming more and more popular.
I know. I mean, but until we have data to support, you know, added value, we can't justify it. So.
Thank you.
Getting back to the buy levels and the raised ranches, if I'm trying to figure out a list price for one of those types of homes, how do I, and you said that the bottom level is not counted. I mean, it's counted as a basement?
Usually for raised ranchers, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
What about buy levels?
Typically, no.
No?
Yeah, typically, and that's just like a customary thing for the area. Although I have to say, in Edison Township, in Menlo Park section, the assessor, at least they used to, actually only have gross living area for the top level.
Right, they do
Yeah,
a lot.
they did. Yeah, yeah. So that
974, and then they
Right.
adjust for that.
Right.
You adjust for that.
So, yeah.
I would
that's what I
con-
usually see in the tax record.
Yeah.
It has like 1,000 square feet, and you go in the house and you know it's better.
Right. So that, again, that's where you have to know the area. You have to know what they're including and what they're not including. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, the important thing is the report be apples to apples. So if you're using a buy level using the lower level, I typically, personally, use the lower level and buy levels. And then when I'm looking at the assessor's information, you can get the property record card, and you can actually take a look and see what that lower level is and how it would add value to, in my definition, of gross living area.
But like if you're doing my real estate partner, we had a raised ranch recently.
Mm-hmm.
So we usually do the square footage, and it was all finished, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
So the only way we weren't sure at first if it was a raised ranch. It looked like a buy level, but on the tax record it said a ranch. So we just did the square footage and then minused out like, it was like an area that was unfinished. We just minused that
Right.
area out.
It's because you wanted to put the square footage in the MLS? Is that why?
There was, on the tax record, it was just like the top level.
Right.
One was finished really nice, and it was partially above grade.
Right, but you wanted that number to put in the MLS? Or you just wanted?
Wanted it to figure out the price.
Oh, I got it.
Multiplier with the, with the square footage.
Yeah. You know, it's case by case. I mean, again, does the assessor look at all the buy levels and label them as ranchers? I don't know. But yeah, most buy levels in this area, I consider everything gross living area. And if I can see that the record really only reflects the top floor, I'll take a look at the property record card.
Okay, so, would you expand the distance to find the same style home as opposed to, say, a buy level closed here and a Cape Cod closed next door? Would you expand the distance and the distance and the time frame over taking something in proximity?
I'd use it all.
You use
Use it all. Yeah, yep.
And then also.
In order to provide one that matches that amenity in the subject. Yes, you go further.
Second one, is there any requirements for the, I know you do Mercer, Somerset, Middlesex. If I'm getting an appraisal done today in Middlesex, is there a requirement from the lenders to the, or management companies, that that appraiser knows the area? Like Menlo Park Terrace is a perfect example. They think it's in, half the time you have to explain it's not in touch it. So you know that, you're smiling, I know you know that, we work together, but not every appraiser gets that.
Right.
And that saves an appeal later, that saves problems later. You don't want to come off as a know-it-all if you're the buyer's agent or the seller's agent to the appraiser, because some of them come in with attitudes.
Right.
So how do you know that you're getting a qualified appraiser who knows the area?
You don't. You don't. That's why, getting back to my soapbox, you give them that envelope and explain everything on all those MLSs.
Right.
Yeah, and even maybe give them a copy of the public records.
So there's no requirement that I could get, because
You're licensed in New Jersey, you can appraise anywhere. Yeah. Yeah.
When a seller is selling, first owner of the house, he bought it from a developer, first owner of the house, and as per the developer, as per the drawings, the square footage is, let's say, 3,500. But he's selling 3 years down the road, and the appraiser comes into appraisal.
Right.
But instead of saying as 3,500 as per his measurements, he says the house is only 31, just for argument's sake. And he took out the cathedral ceiling, which there is nothing. Is a standard practice for the appraisers to take that, the entry foyer where
Yes.
there is no second level?
Correct, yes.
Full space.
Right. The 2-story cathedral ceiling, yeah.
So they
It's not,
take out that space.
it's not included in gross living area.
But then how come the builders register it as 3,500 and not as 3,100? And wouldn't that affect the taxes also?
Good. It depends on if the tax assessor goes out and measures it themselves. Because the tax assessors, they're supposed to use the same criteria as we do. So it depends on if they went out to measure it. Yeah, that's a common problem. That's a common problem. But we have to go by what we measure again. That's why I don't put my value on anything I don't inspect.
Does this really happen? And now
I-
we're really careful not to include the
Yeah.
not living space. Whatever it is, take at least 200 square feet.
I hear it. I see it all the time. And it used to be a day when they would include the square footage of the garage in the gross living area too. But we don't see that as much. But yeah, definitely it's a problem.
I'll take one more question. As Beth's mom is waiting for Beth to get back to her.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question about appealing the outcome of appraisals.
Yes.
What would you recommend to be the best way to properly appeal the outcome of an appraisal?
There's really only one way. You got to start with the buyer. You have to start with the buyer, and I'll tell you, if the value is below the sale price, you're probably not going to get that buyer on. Or I'm sorry, if the value is above the sale price, which you wouldn't be appealing anyway. I take that all back. Okay, so you start with the buyer, because the buyer has to contact their mortgage company. Yeah, and just provide them with information. Just say, hey, did you take all this into consideration? Yeah.
And so would it be so if I'm representing the buyer, would it be my responsibility to give supporting comps of a higher price, or would it be the listing agent's responsibility? This was a real question I was asked.
If you're
So if the appraisal came in below below the agreed upon price,
right.
Is it my responsibility as a buyer's agent to give comps to show a higher price, or would that be the responsibility of the listing?
It depends on who wants to initiate the appeal. Because I would think that the listing agent probably would want to initiate the appeal, and the listing agent would contact you and say, hey, you know, can we appeal this? And if you're in agreement, you give it to the buyer. If the buyer's in agreement, then it goes to the lender. But the buyer is the one who has to give it to the lender. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they're the client of the lender. Yeah. All right. Well, this has been fun. Thank you all. I gave you my cards, and they're somewhere.
Yes,
People can pick them up. So I look forward to working with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beth. We do have Beth's cards outside on the table. Please grab one. And we will also email everyone that put their card in the fishbowl, the information for first team title, the order information if you guys wanted any of the marketing stuff. And again, grab Beth's cards. Sounds like from a lot of the stuff we heard today, listings will be revised. Your next listing appointments, you'll approach it differently, especially the rule that if there's not a full bath on that ground floor, that's not a functioning bedroom, which makes sense. But yeah, this is why we have this, because we're not appraisers, and it's great to hear exactly from an appraiser what they're looking for, what they count, and it's an ongoing thing. Looks like there's going to be some changes down the pike with the appraisal industry, and we all need to adjust. Seems like this was a very popular topic, and maybe we need to revisit it again. So thank you all for coming, and we look forward to seeing you guys next month.